He had grown thinner and more brown in the open air. His muscles were taking on a tough fiber such as they never had possessed before. But nevertheless, it had often been torture. He was just beginning to be inured to the labor and the constant racking in the saddle. If it had not been for the silken gaits of the great black stallion, he knew that he never could have kept up his end. But now he saw a chance to rest. Roger Lincoln, no doubt, never would have dreamed of drowsing in the uncovered nakedness of the prairie during the day, but that was because he was almost more panther than man. And young Torridon felt that he was gathered into a deep security by the very fact that, no matter what enemy the prairie might hold, it also held Roger Lincoln. To the wisdom, the skill, the courage of that famous man, he implicitly bowed. So he fell sound asleep, with his head in the shadow of a small bush. There would be a quiet lecture from Lincoln when that hunter returned to the camp, but the joy of relaxing in the sun that drew the soreness from his muscles was more than the youngster could forego. He wakened at last with a start, feeling that he had been hearing whispering voices. His heart was beating wildly, and he got to his knees and looked cautiously about him. Lincoln's gray mare and Asher still were grazing nearby. Nothing stirred on the plain except the shining footprints of the wind upon the grass now and again. He was reassured by this sense of peace, until glancing down, he saw that his shadow lay small at his feet. The sun was straight overhead, and he had slept away the entire morning. Half a day had gone by, and there was no trace of Roger Lincoln's return. In 7 hours he could have gone afoot nearly 20 miles out and 20 miles back. But it might be that, starting back with a heavy load of newly shot game, he had stepped in a hole and wrenched an ankle. Even Roger Lincoln could not be entirely impervious to accident. Torridon made up 2 packs, carefully, like a schoolboy working to please a master, for Lincoln was a shrewd and keen critic of everything that his pupil did. He knew how to make silence thunder with his displeasure. When that work seemed fairly well done, then he mounted Asher, and taking the gray on the lead, he began to ride through the prairie. Lincoln had showed him how to go about such a thing, using a starting point as the center of widening circles, and so tracing a larger and a larger web, covering every inch of the ground. For 2 hours he kept Asher in brisk motion. At the end of that time he paused at the verge of a riverbed, and began to arrange his thoughts. There had been no sight, and there had been no sign of his companion. Though from the back of a horse, half a dozen times he had been on low hillocks, from which the plain was visible for many miles around, nothing had moved into his ken. He freshened his grip on the heavy rifle that he had learned to balance across the pommel of his saddle, and fought back the panic that leaped up in his breast. Something had happened to Roger Lincoln. He swallowed hard when he thought what that meant. Fort Kendry, where he hoped to find Nancy Brett, still was 8 days' march away from them, Lincoln had said, and as for its direction, he had only the slightest idea. He could see now that he had been following the great scout with half of his brain asleep, trusting blindly to the guidance of his companion, and never trying to think out the trail problems for himself. He was lost, then. He was totally lost. Across his mind went grim memories of tales he had heard from Lincoln about the plains. Men who wandered for weary weeks, with no game in sight, with no glimpse of a human being, until chance saved them, saved 1 out of 100 who passed through such a time. And he, Paul Torridon, ignorant totally of all that a lonely man should do, ignorant of the way to return, ignorant of the trail that lay ahead, what would become of him? Dreadful panic gripped him, shook him. He was lost. He got down off his horse and took out paper and pencil. He wrote swiftly. To whoever finds my body, if my gun and my horse are near, you are welcome to them. Treat the horse well. It is the best I ever have seen. Only, if you wish to ride him, don't wear spurs. They drive him mad. Whatever I have, you are welcome to. But for heaven's sake, take the enclosed note to Nancy Brett at Fort Kendry. She is living there with her cousin, Samuel Brett, and his wife. He signed that, Paul Torridon, and then he went on to write, more slowly. Dear Nancy, I write this knowing that I am hopelessly lost.